we have a two-part question. Should the U.S. call for renegotiating the North American Free Trade Agreement? The second part, to what extent should U.S. trade policy promote economic opportunity, labor, environmental standards, and fundamental human rights and democratic principles among our trade partners?
I'm for fair trade. I believe, frankly, that we've been played for chumps. I believe we've taught interest in China how to build airplanes, and they created an airplane manufacturing industry, and now they're going to attempt to come after our market share after we taught them how to do it. I believe that China is probably guilty of jury-rigging their currency value so that they can more effectively compete on the international market. I believe that it does not make sense, Peter, whatsoever, for us to have certain minimum safety standards for our workers, which I support, certain minimum environmental standards for the manufacturing of products in this nation, which I support, and then blithely allow us to import products that are made from nations which have no such minimum protections. That's what I believe. That's what I will advocate to change. What I also know is that NAFTA has materially contributed to the decline in the manufacturing base in this nation. It's important for us all to realize that a scant 30 years ago in 1979, 30% of all non-farm jobs in this nation were manufacturing, and today it's 9%. We should remember that in this last decade, the one that I alluded to earlier, where middle-class incomes, when adjusted for inflation, actually declined, and where, by the way, this nation, for the first time in 70 years, created net zero jobs, which is unlike each of the previous 6 decades where we created a minimum 20% growth in jobs. We created no new jobs in this nation in the first decade of this century. During that decade, we lost something like 5.6 million manufacturing jobs. And what I would advocate, what I do advocate, is that it is time that we said invigorating our economy and job creation is our number one priority. Good job creation is our number one priority, and that all our other policies ought to be filtered through, does it help us achieve that policy? And that includes trade.
The state and the federal government use transportation dollars for mostly the construction of or the improvement to roads or bridges, that kind of stuff. If elected, would you be willing to work with the AFL-CIO to find an additional funding source for mass transit? And if so, what could it be? If not, why not?
Well, yes, I would be willing, and no, I don't know what it would be, honestly, and would look forward to working with you on the identification of that. It's not an area that I have deep expertise in, and I would appreciate the input. Clearly, however, I want to get back to what I said earlier. When it comes to job creation in this country, I hope to bore you all to death with how many times I say that, but one of the important elements of that is infrastructure upgrading, and that includes roads and bridges and mass transit. We are way behind in what we need to do to keep freight and highly mobile, and that includes a need to substantially increase our investment in infrastructure, including along the lines you alluded to.
What would you do to secure transportation infrastructure dollars for the 3rd District? And which projects do you think are the most important?
Clearly, the single largest and most important transportation project in the 3rd, but not the only important one, but the largest, would be the Columbia River crossing. My record on that issue is fairly established. I am an advocate for improving the Columbia River crossing, and will continue to be so. There are legitimate concerns about the safety of the Columbia River crossing. There are legitimate concerns about its impact on our security, given that I-5 is the major north-south arterial on the entire West Coast. And there are absolutely legitimate concerns about it impeding our ability to move freight back and forth, to say nothing of the inefficiency of people sitting in traffic hours on end, and the incredible drain on our economy that brings about. But there are lots of transportation infrastructure projects in the 3rd that should be looked at, including the Port of Vancouver's railway system, which looks like spaghetti if you look on it on a map, a siding rail in the Port of Kalama, up in Lewis County, where the TransAlta Industrial Park is getting teed up to attract additional jobs, we hope, for major employers. We hope there will be some infrastructure needs there. So there are infrastructures throughout the 3rd Congressional District that merit our attention.
And would you be a co-sponsor of EFCA, of the Employee Free Choice Act, and would you vote for it in its present form?
The answer to the latter is yes. The answer to the former is I do not know. I've not made any commitments to co-sponsor a bunch of legislation, but I'm clearly on record in support of EFCA and would vote accordingly, including in its current form. The only legislation that I have indicated that I would co-sponsor is financial re-regulation. Other than that, frankly, I'm not served in Congress. I want to kind of get a sense of what all of that means and what kind of bandwidth I would have for being included and participating in that. But my position on the issue is clear, Bob. There is something I want to say, and it's the most important thing I could say before leaving here. And it is to look you all in the eye and say, I would be honored by your support. I would be proud of your support. To the best of my recollection, in each of the 5 times I ran for the state legislature, I received the support of the House of Labor. It meant a lot to me then. It would mean every bit as much to me now. Thank you for your time.